The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. We'll be starting in just a minute. Just giving a few minutes for others to join. Hi there, everyone. Thank you for waiting. Just wanted to give a little time for everyone to join. So welcome to the webinar today on Azure Stack, and thanks for joining. My name is Kim Larson. I'm the Director of Business Development for CTGlobal North America. Our session today will be led by Jakob, Gottlieb, Svendsen, and Andreas, Sobczyk, and they're going to be delivering Azure Stack in action for you. And we will have time for Q&A at the end, and if anyone has any questions as we go along, please feel free to put them in the chat window and we can address them as we can. So I just want to take a couple of minutes to tell you all about CTGlobal, who we are and what we do in the event that some of you are not familiar with us. So we're a global consultancy founded in 1999 and based out of Copenhagen, Denmark. We have offices in 5 countries and we service customers globally. We are lucky enough to have 7 Microsoft MVPs on our staff. We hold multiple Microsoft competencies in data center, cloud platform, enterprise mobility, plus security, and Windows and devices. We're also an Intune Elite partner. And we also, we partner with other firms that allow us to provide additional offerings to our clients. As far as Azure Stack goes, Lenovo and GridPro are the Azure Stack partners. And next slide. There you go. So CTGlobal, we support digital transformation and we provide solutions around the following: enterprise client management, identity security, and cloud, automation, visualization, and development. And we have this team of experts available to help you with any of your needs. I'm now going to pass this over to Jakob and Andreas so they can introduce themselves and get started on the technical discussion.
Yep. Hello, everybody. My name is Jakob Gottlieb Svendsen, and a great pronunciation, Kim. I've been in CTGlobal here for a decade, So it's been a while. My focus has mainly been automation and PowerShell scripting, different kinds of integrations, but also development. So my title today is Principal Consultant and Lead Developer. I've been so lucky for the last 5 years to be awarded the MVP award. And recently in December, me and some friends released a book about hybrid cloud with Azure Stack and Azure. So it's mainly focused on Azure Stack. And my part in this book has been about developing offerings, templates for Azure Stack. And you will actually see some of the stuff that is part of the book in a demo later in this session. Yep, your turn.
Hello everyone, my name is Andreas Sobczyk. I am a global senior consultant here at CTGlobal, and I am focusing on Azure Stack, software-defined data center in terms of Hyper-V, Storage Direct, and network virtualization, with a lot of automation on the top. So doing all kinds of automation tasks with PowerShell together with Jakob. And I'm together with Jakob, the co-founder of the Cloud and Data Center User Group in the Copenhagen area. So first, we want to spend a few minutes to tell everybody what is Azure Stack. Microsoft has been speaking about Azure Stack for 3 years, and the product has transformed a lot over the years. They have been developing it, but now it's here. So Azure Stack is not like any other Microsoft product you get in your data center. Azure Stack is not a new Windows version or a new Exchange version where you get a install media and install it on your own servers or in a virtual machine. Azure Stack is an extension service of Azure, bringing the power of the cloud into your data center. And Azure Stack is consistent with Azure. As some of you may know, we previously had something called Azure Pack that was look and feel like Azure, but not like Azure. With Azure Stack, we now have the exact same API levels, the exact same levels of integrations as we have in the public Azure.
Yes, exactly. So if we look at the Azure and then next to Azure Stack, Azure is built on, of course, an infrastructure with some services on top, but the main thing we interact with is the Azure Resource Manager. First of all, we use our portal, PowerShell scripts, or our tools to do our work, to create resources, to manage resources. But when we connect to Azure, we connect via the Azure Resource Manager. This is what they have replicated into Azure Stack. So from our side of the view, from our tools, from our portal or other or PowerShell scripts, for instance, we have the exact same entrance, the same APIs, the same options as we have in Azure. This means that we can actually use the same scripts, we can use the same templates, as long as we keep some things in mind. Because there is, of course, I mean, we buy a box for our data center, or 2 boxes, 3 boxes. Microsoft buys 100 containers to run a service. So of course, we don't have all services available, but we have a huge chunk of them, and which are very powerful and can be used for a lot of different things.
So the important thing is here to take notes of the lines we drawn around the different bricks. So the Azure Resource Manager and the toolset is the same as in Azure, but the services behind the cloud infrastructure and the PaaS services, it is not the same. The cloud infrastructure is not the special built Microsoft servers, it's standard off-the-shelf servers from the vendors. And the PaaS services has a bit variety.
Some of them have.
So Azure Stack is delivered as an integrated system, meaning that you don't go to Microsoft to buy Azure Stack, you go to the hardware vendor. And currently we have 4 vendors delivering Azure Stack. We have Lenovo, HP, Cisco, and Dell. And we are partnering mainly with Lenovo on our integrations here. So you buy a rack of hardware and that comes pre-configured, pre-installed, everything ready to go with Azure Stack running. So it's a turnkey software-defined data center cloud solution directly in your data center with 4 cables, and that's it. There will be additional partners coming with other solutions, but for now, these are the 4 main ones. So what services are able in Azure Stack? We have the virtual machines and virtual machine scale sets like we have in the public Azure. We have networking features, so virtual networks, gateways, network security groups, load balancers, like we have in public Azure. And we have the storage accounts, not the managed storage, but we have the storage account with tables, blobs, and queues. Then we also have the app services and the Azure functions like we have in public Azure. They are truly consistent with Azure as well, but require a bit configuration.
Yeah, and you should maybe mention that the app service is the one that spans over web apps, mobile apps, and API apps in
Yes,
Azure.
Exactly. Then we have the 2 database providers currently in Azure Stack, which is MySQL and Microsoft SQL Server. Those 2 are treated a bit differently, but we are not going to dig too much into that right now. We will do later webinars digging into the infrastructure behind. And then the last category is pre-configured, pre-validated service templates that we can deploy and run in our Azure Stack. So container services, Cloud Foundry, Service Fabric, and much more.
Yeah, and exactly. And since we can run the same services, we get the same advantages as we have in public Azure. So the app services, as you will see in one of the Andreas's demo, you'll see that we have the deployment slots. We have all the extra features that we get from running a web application in Azure compared to running a standard web server on our own machines or our own setup.
So with that, let's take a look at how it actually looks like.
So here we have the Azure Stack portal. And if anybody has ever seen Azure, that's down here, right? Over there, you see that it's quite the same. The colors are different, but that's actually just something you can change yourself. It's a good idea when you work with both Azure Stack and Azure to make sure that you can see the difference. But the idea is here you have the exact same feel. And as Andreas mentioned, Azure Pack was there before, but it had kind of the same feel, but this is actually the same. So what we have here is we have the exact same experience as in Azure. On the other hand, we have more control ourselves because we can decide what we will deliver for our users in our Azure Stack. For example, just to show a standard Windows server, we can go to the marketplace. As you can see in our demo Azure Stack we have here, we have a lot of different offerings here. You can actually synchronize these from Azure. So there is, how many was it, around?
I think it's around 200 marketplace items right now, and it seems like there's a bunch of new ones popping up each month.
Exactly. So you can actually synchronize the ones you want into your Azure Stack and deliver them on premises. What you'll see later is that we can also create your own. Let's just try one here for the Windows Server 2016 data center. As you can see, there is no difference. We have the exact same requirements like passwords, complexity, and we have the same things about subscriptions as we're used to in Azure. So different groups can have different subscriptions, and we can have and we have resource groups to keep stuff in here. Maybe now one. Maybe I should follow Andreas's guidelines for governance and naming standards, but yeah, that's how it goes. And you see, it has the same look and feel because it is the same. I'm not so good at typing password apparently. Yeah, but I'm not gonna go through all of this GUI here. I'm just going to show you. Hey, you couldn't type it either. We're just going to show that it is the same field. If you can hit the right buttons when you type a password.
That doesn't work.
It's not an error. This is actually a human error from Andreas. Or me. We both. There you go. See? That's how hard it is. You just need to type the same 2 passwords and then you're good to go. We can select different sizes here, and again we are using the same sizes as in Azure. Of course, you don't have all of them available because there is a huge amount of them, but there is a lot of them available right here. And of course, it depends on what hardware you buy, how much you can run. When we look at services, you'll see that it looks we have all these services installed in our system, so we can work with app services, and web apps, and so on, the same way as we work in Azure. Yeah. Is that about it for the first? So Andreas can take over.
And we said that you can run the same code, but is it actually true? So as you can see here, I have 2 completely identical PowerShell scripts. The only difference in these 2 are the location. So here my region location is West Europe, and here it is local. So and you can see that this one is signed into the Azure cloud, and this one is signed into the Azure Stack tenant cloud. So I can now, by executing the exact same PowerShell script, provision a VM on Azure Stack and Azure without changing any code. This is a huge benefit. So instead of having to write different code for different systems, you are actually able to write once and deploy to any cloud. And this could also be a service provider hosting the Azure Stack. So you could have Azure Stack as an enterprise, you could have it as a hoster, you can use public Azure. So we won't wait for this one to finish. It takes 10 minutes or so, but let's see by the end if it's provisioned.
Yeah, it always takes a while to copy the data, of course. Yeah, so but as I said before, we can actually provide these marketplace items to our users. That means that any items that's in the not all of the items in the Azure cloud, but many of the items in the Azure cloud we can actually synchronize into our marketplace here and then provide to our customer, to our users. And as Andreas says, we could be a service provider, or we could be an enterprise company that needs to have an easier way to control their environments. We can take it to the next level, and that's something that we in CTGlobal we specialize in helping, of course, getting started, getting everything up and running. By that I mean having the right naming standards, or the governance, and how to actually use Azure Stack, and of course to help generate a template, create templates, scripts, or even your own marketplace items, because it is actually possible to define marketplace items. First thing you do is you create a template that a template actually describes what resources we want, but it's actually possible to go in and define your own wizard GUI here too. So we can actually customize so that when somebody in the company or a customer, if you're a service provider, needs to order something, we can actually provide them with customized GUIs that actually only ask the questions that we want them to answer, and then the rest of the decisions around, naming or placement or whatever we need to decide when we define new resources, we can have that in our template, and we can define the rules for that ourselves. So you see, what I can actually do here is to use the real, the normal controls here. So for instance, when I write a DNS name, it actually checks if it already exists. But I can also define more complex GUIs, like in this case, do you want this to be OMS connected? Yes. In this case, I chose to make it possible to type in an ID and a key for a specific workspace, but I could have made a drop down instead saying which department are you from, or which type of environment is this for? Is it test or production? And then I could decide where to connect it to. So I can actually, as you can see, make a GUI that responds to different decisions, so that when user says, yes, I want to connect it to OMS, then pops up new questions asking, do you then want it to be an automation hybrid worker, for instance? Yes, I want to, and we can then ask more questions. So this is completely customized. This is something I came up with just as a general management VM offering, but in a case where it would be implemented at a customer, we would probably make it more strict, or have some things hard-coded so that we can follow company standards, naming standards, placement standards, all these things, with a few easy questions for the actual user that deploys it.
Yeah, it gives you a possibility to build up your own service catalog within Azure Stack that is complying with your governance model, because it's a common issue in public Azure that developers get access to Azure and then they just start to go nuts and provision everything, and you don't have any control. But here you can define, okay, this is our proven, checked, ready solutions, and this is our service catalog. So when you build a VM, you have to build it this way, and then you only have that GUI to follow.
Yes, exactly. And another thing that's key to this thing is that we have a complete audit log of what happens here. So who ordered what, who did what, who stopped that machine, who started that machine, and so on. There is a lot of everything that happens in this portal is logged into an audit log. So that again turns this thing and takes this thing to the next level in logging and usability compared to your standard private cloud.
Yeah, maybe it's important to mention now we're talking auditing and security, that since Azure Stack is delivered as a turnkey integrated system, you don't have access to it. You cannot access the Hyper-V manager behind. You cannot access the domain behind. It's a completely locked down black box, so you don't have to worry about all this. And it comes pre-validated with all kinds of security validations.
Yeah. And those are actually quite hard to get if you create your own. Some of them, at least, it's quite hard to get if you create your own setups. And you should actually, you can compare this with another appliance, like something for your kitchen or something like that. We don't know exactly what's inside, but we don't need to know, because everything is handled. Every update is handled automatically from Microsoft, and also we don't, since we cannot go in behind the scenes and mess with the hardware, there's a lot less chance that we actually do something that can break the system. And that is maybe one of the most important parts. And lastly, as Andreas said, everything is validated. So even driver versions or different hardware, it's only hardware that is validated by Microsoft in that combination that is allowed to run the system. So what we have seen in the past, and still sees, of course, in private data centers, is that sometimes you get a combination that isn't quite well. There might be a driver with an issue and so on. You can be certain that when you have something here, it has already been tested, and a lot of other people have the exact same configuration. So if there is any issues, they will probably be found way before you actually experience them yourself, and come with one of the automatic updates, which you then schedule and update your Azure Stack. Should we? So, as I said before, we can actually create these marketplace items ourselves, and GUI and so on. It is quite a steep learning curve to create the GUI, and so what we can actually offer is one of our partners, Grid Pro, can offer is actually a tool that can, part of the functionality of this tool is to actually create marketplace items. So this is an add-on that you can buy for Azure Stack called EV-Ops. EV-Ops makes it possible for us to create one or more accounts Again, this is also meant for service providers. Therefore, it's fully multi-tenant supported. But in here, we can actually define multiple things. In here, we have VM for approval. I can actually go in here and define these marketplace items here. We should maybe mention while we wait here is that when you want to test out Azure Stack, there is a test called development kit. This is what we are running here. We run it on a generic machine. It's actually, this machine is actually quite old. I mean, 7 years or something like that. But as long as it has more than 128 gigabytes of memory and enough CPU, we can actually run a free version of Azure Stack on it. That's why the performance is not as if you were to buy a real Azure Stack, but it is actually very useful here. So what we can do in EVOps is actually to define marketplace items. First of all, we can define our own wizard. So we can actually, using the GUI here, define which questions we want for the user. For example, in this case, web app with business service, I've actually defined that there should be a question called department that actually makes the, click here, that actually takes information from a ServiceNow instance, all the departments in ServiceNow, and shows to the user in a dropdown. So we can actually make connections to external systems, bring information in here so that they can, so you can have an even more dynamic and even more customized experience for the user. Besides that, the general way you work in Azure and Azure Stack is that you provide a subscription for somebody, a team or a person, and this subscription has some limits in Azure Stack around how many resources can they make. But in some cases, in some specific orders, you might want to have approvals too, so that when somebody orders something, somebody else needs to approve before it goes into and is created in your Azure Stack. EVOps can help with that too, because we can actually, in the marketplace items, set up that whenever this is ordered, somebody needs to approve. They go in via the normal GUI here and approve their stuff. So let's try one of those marketplace items, and you'll see that there is no difference from a pre-delivered one we have synchronized from the marketplace item, and one that we have designed in EVOps. We find it in marketplace item, and you can now see here that that it will connect to our ServiceNow and get the department, unless my ServiceNow instance was actually closed right now because it's a test instance. But you can see what you could do is you can actually also define the same things as I did before, like conditional questions, so that if I say department, I can select department, but if I want to define an alternative cost center, well, then I can actually select that here. Again, this was a test service now that is currently under maintenance, so probably not the best thing to demo. But there's nothing wrong with the actual call here. It's my service now that is shut down. Yep. So in here, as you can see, if I were to order one of the, for example, VM with approval, there is actually multiple steps. There is the wizard, the ordering, then there is the approval, and then there is the deployment itself. And in here, we can actually see, if we go to that template, we can actually see that we have defining the wizard, which was the actual GUI that we just saw. We have workflow where we can actually define what happens. So you can see here that it starts with an order. We can set up an approval that goes to a specific group of people or a specific person. We can then deploy the actual template here. So this is for a virtual machine. But the cool thing about templates for Azure and Azure Stack, the ARM templates, is that they can contain any number of resources. So a template like it was in Azure Pack was just a VM or just a website. No, here you can define your whole environment, your whole solution in a single template, which Andreas will show a demo of in a second.
Well, as you can see, this gives us the possibility to create some more advanced workflows for our service requests. So we can add in automation tasks, we can add in a change request, or push data to ServiceNow to populate our CMDB, or anything is more or less possible with the service hooks we have right now in EVLs.
Even recently added so that when we type something in a text field, we can even have a call out to an external system and ask if this is okay, is this value okay? So we could make an Azure function in between, or we can make something that we can call and say, does anybody, for example, if we want to create a business service, we might want to check if that business service already exists in our CMDB. So when somebody types the business service name, well, we can check if it already exists, and before the user even submits the wizard, we can actually block the user and say, well, you cannot create a business service because by that name, because it's already existing in your system. So this EVOps extension for Azure Stack, it makes it possible, first of all, as I said, to have an easier way to generate your marketplace items, but also these extras, which are calling out to external systems like ServiceNow, either for validating for values or even for steps in your workflow. For example, opening a change request and closing the change request in the end. Right? All right. So should we move on then to the next?
Yeah. So the next thing we are going to take a look at is a more complete scenario. So the scenario here we are going to show is that we are going to use continuous delivery with Visual Studio to deploy all the resources we need for a web app, and then afterward deploy the web app. So if I go into my resource groups, you can see here I currently have a few resource groups. I have the test VM we provisioned before. I have a Kubernetes instance and some resources for our Azure Stack management. But if I go to Visual Studio Team Services, I have created a continuous delivery workflow here. Visual Studio Online being a bit slow today. Yeah, so here you can see I have a build making a template. I will show it in a short minute. That is simultaneously deploying the template to our Azure Stack and our Azure environment. So if I click on this one here, you can see that it's provisioned to West Europe. If I click on this one here, you can see it is provisioned to local in my Azure Stack. So let me create a new release of this, and then I will show you the template. So for those of you who don't know ARM templates, also known as Azure Resource Manager templates. Azure Resource Manager template is a JSON format that describes how the infrastructure you are going to provision should look like. And so it looks like this. The easiest thing to do is to use Visual Studio to make it, because it has a few intelligence to help you out.
Yeah, and it has some wizards that can help you out too. Yeah, actually, you can read the book and learn.
Yeah, this is the Jakob chapter in the book.
One of them.
Yeah. So I have some parameters. This is the things that is different from each deployment. Then I have some variables where I can do some logic, combining my parameters in a different way, building up display strings and IDs. And then I have the actual resources. So in here you can see I have a resource of the type SQL login that will create a login with the following username, password, and the SKU. Then I'm going to provision the database. So it's a SQL adapted database with the following login, the size that I selected, the tiers I selected, and that will give me a database. I will then get a hosting plan, which is essentially my IIS farm in the Azure Stack. And on top of the IIS farm, which is completely scalable, I then deploy my web app, my website, with the connection string combined from the database I provisioned and what's called a deployment slot, which is a subsite that I can swap between.
Yeah, you'll show that in a second. But it's important to mention also that these templates are the backbone to whenever anything is deployed here. So when we ordered one of the marketplace items before, it actually just triggered one of these templates. These templates can be quite complex. It can be quite a steep learning curve. But luckily, there's a lot of examples out there from both Microsoft and community. And as Andreas said, there is also some help to get in Visual Studio, so it becomes easier to do. But usually you need to define them once and then use them a lot of times.
Yeah. And these are the same templates I use to provision my resources in Azure. So I just put in a blocker here, and I don't know I'm blocking myself. Starting out. But you can see that the two Azure Stack resources have been provisioned in less than 3 minutes. So let's take a look how it looks in Azure Stack now. So if I now click refresh here, you see two new resource groups popped up. I can open. The reason I create two is because I want to separate my development and my production completely. So they are running in two different instances. So I now have the database, the IIS farm, the SQL login, the web app, and the staging slot.
Just to mention again, these two resource groups was generated by the same template, but they just have different inputs for the name of the website and for the group that it's supposed to create the actual, that it creates the resources.
So for each environment, I have a parameter file, one saying the development. So I prefix it with dev, and I give it a S1 SKU. The production is of course prefixed with PRD, and then I want that one to run a higher SKU to give me more power for my production.
Yeah, and more features available. Yes. And as can you switch back to template just for a short while? You can see right here that the app service SKU there is a list of allowed values. So in these templates, we can actually set up, okay, this template is for deploying a specific things. What options do the user is the user allowed to make? Are they allowed to use this template and then use a pricing tier, a specific SKU for the sites that are higher? Nope, we're gonna block that by having a list of allowed values.
So I can now go, if I go and refresh the browser here, I should hopefully have 3 websites running saying, hey, Azure App Services is running. So now we want to provision a website. And for that, I have another workflow or release definition. Let's take a look at how it looks like. So here I have a little .NET website using a database behind that can simultaneously deploy to Azure Stack and Azure, just like you saw before. So in the first task, I deploy the web app to the dev staging slot and then validate using PowerShell that the site responds. This is just a simple unit test to check, okay, the site responds, so I can continue. If the site works and responds with 200 OK in HTTP status, I then swap the stagings and the development slot. Yeah. If that succeeds, we then push it onwards to the user acceptance testing, which is a deployment slot under the web app. And after that, we can then push it into production. But as you can see here, I have a little guard, the little man, saying that somebody needs to validate this before we are changing between deployment slots.
Yeah, exactly. And what's really great about this is that we have, first of all, the slots, that you have a single website, but you have multiple websites within that website. So instead of replacing the version you have that you know works, you replace the secondary site called the staging slot. Then you swap, because if then the new version has some kind of error, you just swap back. That can be done with a few clicks from your cell phone. Personally did that once in production, where we suddenly saw an error that we hadn't found in the testing, but easily we could swap back. That is one of the powers of having deploying websites to a cloud system like Azure here, where we get all these extra features on top of just a web server.
So let's take a look at how the actual web app looks like. We can start and stop it. You can see we have the swap and restart. We can see we have had 4 requests. We can see that we have deployment slots. So we have a staging slot that is also in the running state. Like we have in IIS, we have the application settings. If you have, and this looks exactly like Azure. So if you know Azure, you know this. If you are new to Azure, this is a cool thing. I can define my connection strings, app settings, and you can see that I can lock this setting to a deployment slot. So if I want to use a different database for my staging compared to what I use for production or development, then I can bind this parameter for the slot.
This is the dev side, right? So this is the lower pricing tier.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can see
here.
In the cloud, you have two, you either scale up or you scale out. And this is the thing that is very hard to do in your own data center. It's easy to scale up and down if you have a virtual machine, or also if you have a physical, you just add more CPU or add more memory. So you can see here, I can scale down to a smaller tier on my app.
Yeah, but you can also see that S2 and S3 is currently not available because we haven't, as an admin, provided more instances of these. This is something that happens in the admin portal, because Azure Stack also have a portal for administration. But since we don't have multiple hours today, we'll go through that in an upcoming webinar in the near future.
Yeah, so for the app service, you pre-configure how many of each tier you want to have standby waiting to take over workloads.
Exactly.
We also have the option to scale out. So this means how many instances do we want to run? And because I'm using the development kit, I cannot really scale out.
But because we haven't deployed enough instances for some to be available.
Yeah. But if I had the production, I could scale up here, or I could make an advanced rule that was looking at performance on the hosts, on the underlying IIS host, and then scale out depending on the workload. So if I had a sudden increase, I was able to scale like I do in Azure.
Yeah, and again, since this is using the same API, the ARM, the Azure Resource Manager ARM, we can use the same scripts for changing this, or the same integrations that we have made for from any other system to change it in our on-premises hybrid cloud here or in Azure.
Let's check the dashboard and see how the deployment of the web app is going. I don't know if they are doing maintains on Visual Studio Online today. Oh, it's there. and we can see that it is still releasing to Azure, but let's just, for the purpose of consistency, if I go, this is the regular Azure, you can see paul.azure.com. I got the exact same resource groups now with exact same resources. The only thing here is that I also have an Application Insights account, which I'm not able to provision in Azure Stack because Application Insights is a massive service in Azure. But using the same template, I got the exact same resources in public Azure. And I get the exact same website.
Just to be clear, Application Insights is one of the services that simply is too big to run in our own data center, in our own integrated system. That doesn't mean that you cannot create an Application Insight account in Azure and use that for a website that is running in your Azure Stack. You will be able to do that, of course.
So you can see it has deployed to the development, it has been deployed to the UAT, but it hasn't been deployed to production. So if I go to my Azure Stack web app and refresh the dev slot, I now have an app. That's a simple to-do list. Just to do.
Yeah.
And that was deployed in, if I have deployed these two right after each other, we would have deployed the entire infrastructure, 2 separate environments, 2 websites, and the whole mechanism to secure that everything goes right in less than 5 minutes.
Exactly, and the advantage of this is that you can test your website. The developers can test the website when they develop the website on the exact same hardware using the same template. So when it deploys in production, we are using a template to deploy it, so we don't forget some kind of extra little service or library that needs to be installed. Many of you probably have experienced similar things when you install things in production from some kind of custom development, for instance. Then you might the descriptions or the guides of installing might have missing a few points, and then the website doesn't work, and so on and so forth. So therefore, when you deploy using a template, same template for each environment, you know that everything is the same, and therefore there's a much bigger chance that it goes well, and
you can see
there's no issues.
The same application has been deployed to the UAT slot on the production website, but if I refresh the production, it hasn't been deployed to production yet. So if I want to complete that, see if I'm able to finish it.
So now it's approved. You can actually set different approvers for each of the environments as you require. And when it's approved, you can actually also, I don't know if you saw it, how quickly he clicked on it, but there is actually also something called defer approval, so that we can say, okay, we want to approve this, but we want to approve it next Friday at 11 o'clock at night, for instance. So therefore, it gets deployed at that exact time, at the same time as our change request has approved us to do it.
Exactly. Or you could trigger it from an external system like ServiceNow, having a change that then triggers it.
Yes, of course, there's APIs to connect to your CMDB, such as.
So let's see if production and UAT has been swapped. No, not yet. This is one of the things that takes some time, both in Azure and Azure Stack, is to swap the production.
When you say time, you mean like 45 seconds or something like that. So we are not talking minutes or hours. Maybe we're talking a few minutes in some cases, but not more than that. Yeah. So this is the few demos we wanted to do, and just to show you that you can deploy, VMs, all the infrastructure that you need for standard IIS infrastructure as service. But there's also the next step. We can actually take this to the next step where we deploy websites or databases or functions or
I actually just yesterday had a few minutes to spare and deployed a whole Kubernetes environment into our Azure Stack. It's perfect for container hosting.
Yes, exactly.
There is many use cases, and you can build your own samples if you can write them.
Yeah. Okay.
So back to the slides.
Yeah. Of course, you are welcome to answer or ask any questions.
So what does it cost? How does it work? So you buy some hardware like you always have been doing. There's nothing different there. So you go to your preferred hardware vendor that is validated with Azure Stack and buy the hardware. So the different vendors, they have both leasing terms. So if you want to buy your hardware as pay as you go, you can do that, but you need to buy the hardware. And then the Azure Stack license is actually free. So the way Azure Stack is licensed is like Azure. It is pay as you go. So by default, you have the pay as you go model. With the pay as you go, you pay only for what you use. So you pay only for the storage you use, you pay only for the VMs you use, you pay only for the app services you use. You don't pay for data transmission, and you don't pay for SQL, you only pay for the SQL hosts behind, which is out of the Azure Stack licensing. So no upfront fees, which is very good. And then I've had a few customers saying, well, I buy the hardware and then I need to pay to use it. And yes, you need to pay to use your hardware. It has always been like this. Before you just paid a Windows license.
And now it's 100%.
Yeah, and then it's 100%. Then you prepay your Windows license. So how many have a fully utilized Hyper-V environment, for example? That's a prepaid Windows license. So instead, you only want to pay for the VMs you're actually running.
Yeah, and the minute you run a website, for instance.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it is a different model, but in most cases, if we look into the actual pricing and the cost of running services, they are usually lower.
It's important to note that the pricing is not the same as in Azure. It's like, I think it's 30% of the price of Azure is what you pay in Azure Stack.
Yep.
But Azure Stack can also be run in what's called disconnected scenario. So in the disconnected scenario, it can be if you're a bank and you are not allowed to be connected to the internet. It can be a boat, a plane.
Maybe not a boat, but a ship.
A oil drilling platform that is disconnected or poorly connected. For that, you of course cannot run the pay-as-you-go because you cannot report back to Microsoft how much you use. So for the disconnected scenarios, you can buy Azure Stack as a fixed fee. And there are two types of licenses. There is an infrastructure as a service only license. So if you only want to run VMs and network virtualization, then you pay that license. Then you can buy the full-blown, where you can also run app service and what service we will get coming in the future. So for disconnected scenarios, you have to buy the capacity license. Yeah, I don't want to go into prices because that's too different from customers.
Of course, we are open to any discussion afterwards about this.
Yeah. So how to get started? Well, as Jakob mentioned earlier, you can deploy the Azure Stack Development Kit. If you just Google Azure Stack Development Kit, you can find the link on Microsoft. Then you download a 25 gigabyte VHD file that you place on a Windows host. And then Microsoft has a guide how to deploy this, but essentially you just open PowerShell and write deploy Azure Stack POC, and after 5 hours you have a running Azure Stack. And you don't need to worry about how it works. It's a black box, so don't spend too many time figuring out how does Azure Stack work, because it's black magic. It just works. This is the whole idea, because you don't need to maintain it yourself. So this is the way to try it out.
And again, the reason for that is that nobody goes in behind the scenes and mess up or update a driver that isn't supposed to have been tested properly and so on. Everything is tested together. Of course, when you run the development kit, you can run it on any machine. Even the early versions people tried to run on their laptop on 32 gigabytes of memory. That is way too little. The minimum requirement is 128 gigabytes, right?
Yes, and you can, if you can afford it, you can deploy the new version 3 series machines in Azure and deploy Azure Stack inside Azure to test it out.
Yeah, and one thing, just if you want to buy and run this, you should get more than 128 gigabytes of memory, because if you want to make VMs or websites or have all these extras installed, they might take more memory.
So what's next for you to do? If you go to the github.com/Azure Stack Tools, Microsoft has a set of tools to Azure Stack. And one of them is a policy, Azure Resource Manager policy, that you can apply to our existing Azure subscription and limit your public Azure subscription to the feature set of Azure Stack. This is a very easy way to get going. The secondary thing is the development kit, as we just spoke about. You can also do the free online course. This link is old, I can see. I didn't manage to update it, but it was updated this night with a new course. It's a free course, and it goes through how to operate Azure Stack and how it works. Fourth thing, read Jakob's book.
Yep, that's a good place to start.
It covers a lot of the internals in Azure Stack and many more.
It also goes through, my part of it goes through, as we said, going through authoring templates, also going through the details around what you need to take into consideration when you want templates to work locally and in Azure. And also the last part, how do you make these custom marketplace items? How do you make these advanced extensions that you can do with those marketplace items?
And last thing, you can book us to a workshop. So we do shorter free ones, we do longer paid ones. We can help you implement the development kit if you want to test it out. We have lots of course material and different scenarios you can run through together with you if you have interest in this and see any value.
Exactly. So of course we can help in any part of a purchase or planning or ideas around, can this be used in your environment? One thing you didn't mention, Andreas, is that Lenovo also, as our partner Lenovo, they also have specific machines that you can buy that are sized to the development kit. So you can buy one that you know will actually host it properly.
Yes, exactly. So question
There's
time.
one question in the question window. It says, are there any WAN limitation for the Azure and Azure Stack sync? We are based in northern Greenland on a SAT connection.
No, there is no limitations, but I can see with that connection it might take some time. In that toolkit that I was on the previous slide, there is tools to download marketplace items offline. So you can do an offline sync, downloading the marketplace item onto a USB drive or something like that. Well, of course not for the development kit, you download to your USB drive, but for production you don't have access to it, so you just download it to your local machine, then copy it over to whatever host has access to Azure Stack, and then there is some import tools to get the marketplace items in.
Yeah, and you should note some of the details we didn't go into today is that when you run the connected scenario, you're using Azure AD. So when somebody logs in, they go to Azure AD and log on. So if you have a slow experience doing that, it will be the same in Azure Stack, right?
Yeah.
If you do the disconnected scenario, you're running ADFS, which means you have a local server to control the logins, and that will of course be executing faster if you have a slow connection.
Yes. But yeah, you can sync marketplace items both with limited connection or completely offline scenarios.
Yeah, I hope that was good enough information. Otherwise, you are free to contact us and we can have a chat about, talk about what. So he said, yes, thanks. And what are the typical prices?
So the hardware pricing, let me just calculate this into something more international. I can only say a bit. So the Azure Stack is based off Storage Basis Direct, which is the hyperconverged infrastructure in Microsoft. And that requires the minimum is 4 hosts. So you cannot buy Azure Stack with less than 4 hosts. And a set that will get you started is around $160,000 for a 4-node installation. And with that, you can run 200 VMs approximately. Right now, Azure Stack can scale up to 12 nodes, and it will be scaling up to 16 nodes very soon. But we are waiting for that right now, and we will also be able to span multiple racks and multiple regions. So the scaling can be massive.
Yeah, and if you look at the software pricing there, yeah.
This is the software pricing. This is like the list price of Azure. So if you have a CSP or EA agreement, you will be running Azure Stack through your existing CSP or EA. And get whatever discounts you get there.
Yeah, so this is the list price.
And this is Danish crowns, I can see, because we're based out of Denmark right now.
Yeah. So, and they actually removed that drop down to change the currency. Right.
So pricing is pretty fair. As you can see, you can license virtual machines without any operating system license, and then you get a really cheap license.
Yeah, for Linux, or if you already have Windows license, right?
Yes, or you can buy it with the Windows license. And the same thing happens for SQL. You can bring your own license. So if you like to prepay everything, you can prepay the entire stack of Windows license and SQL licenses, and you will only pay as you go for the hours of compute.
Yeah, and if you look at web apps, they are currently priced at around 250 kroners. That's about $50, right, or $45 US dollars, but that is for one CPU, and that is actually a bit complex because there is sizes of webs. I mean, a website doesn't take one CPU. You can run multiple websites on one CPU, or depending on your requirements. So this is not a price per website. It can be lower than that, but it can also be higher, of course, if you want more power. And that's they charge per hour on virtual machines and on web apps. If you do this auto scaling stuff that you run in a low, a pool of a few machines by default, and then you scale up when you need to, you can save money on that too.
There is one more question. So, well, it all depends on how mature you are. So Brian is asking, Microsoft said originally that Azure Stack was not an infrastructure replacement. Do we think this is still true? And I would say it all depends on how mature you are. If you are ready to run a fully software-defined data center, and you want the network virtualization and all this, Azure Stack can really be a great way to getting started on getting software-defined infrastructure or software-defined data center. So deploying the full software-defined data center yourself with Hyper-V, software-defined networking, Hyper-V, Storage Basis Direct is quite a task. So an easier way to get started could be with an Azure Stack. But
where did you put the Azure Stack here? Right?
Hmm?
Where did you?
You're looking for the Azure Stack. It's here.
Yeah. Just continue. Yeah.
So it really depends. But if you cannot move to Azure, if you don't fit in the Azure model, you won't fit in Azure Stack. So you should get Azure Stack if you cannot reach Azure. If Azure is not fast enough for you, if the latency is too big or security or things like that.
Yeah. I just wanted to show that I didn't lie earlier. It was just my ServiceNow instance that was shut down because it's a free instance that they shut down every 2 hours. But you can see here when I logged in here to the create VM web app with business service, you can actually see this list is actually a live retrieved from ServiceNow. And if I go here, you can see I can then select a different cost center if I wanted to. Yep.
Yeah. If there's any more questions, feel free. Otherwise, you can see our company Twitter and our email.
Yep.
Just feel free to reach out there, or find me and Jakob on Twitter. We're also available there.
Yeah, as we said, we can help with any part of this. If you have any kind of questions or concerns or help in planning, you get your own Azure Stack.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for coming then.
So with that, to wrap up.
Yeah, I think so. Unless there is more questions, thank you all for joining our first webinar from CTGlobal. There'll be plenty of more of them in the future. We're gonna see how many we can fit in with Azure Stack, talking about administration, about more stuff about the templates. Yeah. If you have any inputs on what you want to see, you're also welcome, very welcome to contact us on Twitter or mail.
Yes. Thanks.